A very good evening to all pious yogis and upasaka and upasikas. We shall continue to discuss the discourse about what to be cultivated or what not to be cultivated. We discuss about acquisitions of individuality or Atthabhava Pratilabha in the previous talk. We also did discuss about 4 kinds of karma. Everyone is the owner of their karma. In one of the discourses of the Buddha, the Buddha explains karma with a simile of a painter or an artist. Is a painter or an artist in their life. So it depends on the skills of every artist. If you as an artist is very skillful, then you could paint very colorful paintings. So here in this, the simile say that the artist represents karma, which is associated elements. When karma is associated with other elements, for example, craving, ignorance, then the karma will produce results. The artist will do their drawings, for example, on a canvas. The canvas here represents the round of rebirth in the 3 realms. Last week we also did discuss about 3 realms of planes of existence. Planes of existence are Kama Bhava, the plane of desire, Rupa Bhava, the plane of form, and Arupa Bhava, the plane of the formless. Sometimes the planes of existence refer to Bhumi, or in Pali, Bhumi. So Apaya Bhumi consists of 4 realms or state of loss. So the 4 states of loss are hell, animal, hungry ghost or Peta, and Asura. Then above the Apaya Bhumi, in the human and above, consists of 3 bhumis. The first is Kama Sugati Bhumi. So Kama Sugati Bhumi refers to the sensual happy plan. Then above the Kama Sugati Bhumi is Rupa Vachara Bhumi, or the plane of form. So if one wishes to reach Rupa Vachara Bhumi, then one must accumulate merits that includes meditations. So one must attain at least the first stage of absorption concentration in order to attain, for example, the Brahma's world. Then above the Rupa Vachara Bhumi is Arupa Vachara Bhumi, or the plane of the formless. So if one aspire to reach Arupa Vachara Bhumi, then one must attain formless absorption concentrations. So karma like an artist. Karma likes an artist. So an artist draws for example, a figure of a man or figure of a woman on the canvas. So karma performed by every individual creates a form in these realms of existence. So when one performs in karma, then there is intention involved in doing a karma. One also makes an aspiration before performing a karma, or after performing a karma, one makes aspiration. For example, may this marriage be a supportive condition for me to live a better life in the future. So the figure of a man or of a woman drawn by the artist depending on his skill or her skill. So the figure of a man or woman created by an unskilled artist could be ugly, deformed, and disagreeable. So if the karma performed with a mind which is not associated with knowledge, will give rise to an ugly, deformed, and disagreeable figure. So you can see with your own eyes, there are people in this world born with deformed, for example, creepers, with an ugly face and so on. But the man or a woman drawn by a skillful artist is beautiful, well-shaped. Similarly, karma, which is performed with a mind associated with knowledge, gives rise to a beautiful and attractive figure. So similarly, whether a person is living a happy life or sorrowful life, depending on his karma or her karma. So there are karma that will lead to the results of rebirth in karma bhava. There are karma that will lead to rebirth in the rupa bhava, the plane of form. And there are karmas that will lead to rebirth in the arupa bhava, the plane of the formless. But the teaching of the Buddha aims at overcoming rebirth in all these realms, in all these three realms. So there are certain conditions and causes that cause a person to take birth again and again in these realms of existence. So once Venerable Ananda approached the Buddha and asked a question. Venerable Ananda asked a question. It is say existence. Existence here means bhava. In what way is there bhava, existence? So the Buddha said, if there were no karma ripening in the plane of desire or sensory realms, would this sense sphere existence be decent? plane of this sensual plane could not be decent. Then the Buddha explains the causes why a person is reborn in this karma bhava. The Buddha explained that for beings hindered by ignorance or avidya and fettered by craving or bound by tanha, karma is the field, consciousness the seed, and craving the moistures for their volitions and aspirations to be established in these inferior realms. So as you know, karma is defined as cetana. So when there's a cetana to do certain karma, then one also make an aspiration that the karma will produce the results, for example, rebirth in certain realms of karma bhava. For example, one makes an aspiration to be reborn in the Satu Maharajika Deva or in the world of Tawatimsa Deva and so on. So the realms in this karma bhava are very delightful. It's still known as inferior realms in the mundane sense. Then the Buddha asked another question to Ananda. If there were no karma ripening in the form realm, rupa bhava, would this form sphere existence be decent? So if one aspires to be reborn in the rupa bhava, then one must accurate merits, not only merits of dana sila, one also must accumulate merits from the practice of bhavana, of meditations. So the bliss enjoyed by beings in the rupa bhava is more superior than the beings in the karma bhava. So these realms, rupa bhava, is an middling realms. Similarly, the Buddha explains with the same reasons, is because beings hindered by ignorance, avidya, and fettered by craving, bound by tanha, karma is the field, consciousness the seed, and craving the moistures for their volition and aspirations to be established in and middling realms. Then the bliss enjoyed by the arupa bhava, beings in the arupa bhava, is more superior than the devas in the rupa bhava. So beings in the arupa bhava is a superior realm compared to the other two realms. Similarly, the Buddha explained with the same causes is because being hindered by ignorance, avidya, and fettered or bound by craving tanha, or karma is the field, consciousness the seed, and craving the moistures for their volition and aspiration to be established or in a superior realm. So in this way, there is a production of renewed existence in the future either in Kama Bhava or Rupa Bhava or Arupa Bhava. So the worldlings who are ignorant of the truth will perform karmas with the aspiration to be born in these realms of existences. So we say that the karma determines one's destiny, and the consciousness runs around in these realms of existence. So the consciousness runs around the samsara, the ocean of samsara. But it does not mean that there's a one and permanent consciousness that runs around the samsara. So we must have the right understanding that consciousness is not permanent. Consciousness subject to instant arising and passing away. Consciousness is arising dependent on condition. So as long as one has not attained the highest stage of enlightenment, then we say that the consciousness will take birth again and again in the ocean of samsara. So once the Buddha said consciousness while standing might stand engaged with form. Form means the rupa. Based upon form, established upon form, with a sprinkling of delight, it might come to growth, increase, and expansion. Once the Buddha said, consciousness while standing might stand engaged with form. Form here means the rupa khanda. Based upon form, established upon form, with a sprinkling of delight, it might come to growth, increase, and expansion. Similarly, consciousness while standing might stand engaged with feeling, or engaged with perception, or engaged with volitional formation. So feeling is Vedana, perception is Sanya, volitional formation is Sankhara. So the consciousness engage with the feelings, or with the perception, or with the volitional formation. So based on either of these three aggregates, established upon either one of these three aggregates, with the sprinkling of delight, it might come to growth, increase, and expansion. Engage is known as upaya in Pali.
คำว่า engage ในที่นี้นะคะก็คือภาษาบาลีใช้คำว่าอุปายะ
The word upaya also means clinging to or attached to. So the consciousness is not able to arise or can't arise without these four aggregates. So the consciousness is engaged with these four aggregates by the way of three kinds of papancha. Papancha is translated as obsessions. The three kinds of papancha or obsessions are craving or tanha, conceit, mana, and wrong view, ditthi. So it's because of upaya or engagement or clinging to with these three kinds of obsessions then the karma will be performed. So this karma becomes a force that produces result, so that consciousness will take birth again. Then the Buddha explained further. Though someone might say, apart from form, rupa khanda, apart from feeling, vedana khanda, apart from perception, sanya khanda, apart from volitional formation, sankhara khanda, I will make known the coming and going of consciousness, its passing away and rebirth, its growth, increase and expansion. That's impossible. In other words, the coming and going of consciousness are depending on these four aggregates. It's not possible to say that the coming and going of consciousness depends on other things beside these four aggregates. So, one who has practiced mindfulness meditation, vipassana meditation correctly, they will come to realize through their personal experience that consciousness is arising on these four aggregates. But it is difficult to realize the arising of the consciousness as long as mindfulness meditators have not yet developed sharp mindfulness and attain deep concentrations. So mindfulness meditators, vipassana meditators, have to rightly understand that the objects of mindfulness are the five aggregates. So in this tradition of mindfulness meditation, mindfulness meditators begins with the mindfulness of the aggregates of form or materiality, rupa khanda. So rupa khanda consists mainly the four primary material elements. The four primary material elements are the wind element, earth element, fire element, and water elements. But in the practice of mindfulness meditations, we can only gain direct experience of the three material elements. They are earth element, wind element, and fire elements. In other words, the objects of contact, which is called potapa in Pali, consists of these three kinds. But in accordance with the teachings of Abhidhamma, water element or apodhatu cannot be sensed directly through contact. So water element is manifested as a cohesion of the material elements. So in other words, the water element holds together all these four material elements. So we cannot experience the characteristics of the water element directly, but we can know it through what called inferencing, or infer from the cohesions of the rupa. So mindfulness meditators have to mindful of these three material elements directly, earth element, fire element, and wind elements. In other words, meditators are able to experience directly the nature of hardness, or the nature of heat, and the nature of movements or motion directly. So during the practice of walking meditation, mindfulness meditators are mindful of the wind element as the basic object of walking meditation. So here the wind elements means movements, motion. Movements, motion is wind element. The nature or characteristics of wind element also includes the nature of support. So when meditators practice walking meditation, then they have to pay attention of the movements of the feet, left and right, and then they will increase the objects of mindfulness gradually to lifting, pushing, dropping, and so on. The meditators have reached the end of the walking path. They have to stand still and be mindful of the standing postures and know it as it is standing a few times. So meditators have to mindful note the standing postures at least about 5 to 10 times. Then meditators have to mindful of the turning movements body and know it as turning. So movements will be perceived at that time. When meditators are mindful of standing postures, the nature support also be perceived or realized by the meditators. But if the mindfulness is not yet sharp and concentration is not deep enough, meditators shall not be able to realize or to perceive the nature of the wind element clearly. So if meditators wish to develop sharper and sharper mindfulness, more and more attentive mindfulness, then meditators have to increase the virya of mental effort gradually. So we always emphasize that every moment of mindfulness should be attentive or precise and energetic. So, for example, when meditators are mindful of the process of the pushing movements, then meditators have to make an effort or virya or to keep the mindfulness with the movements. It's because there's a process of movements occurring at that moment. So that process of movements should be the object of mindfulness. If meditators did not put forth enough virya, then the mind will be running here and there. For example, if effort is not strong enough, then the mindfulness will not stay with the process movements. Then the mindfulness will notice various sound, noise of the environments. In other words, mindfulness always goes out onto the sense object. If the effort is not strong enough, then the mindfulness will notice other less distinct objects. For example, the pressing of the other foot, tightness of the muscle, and so on. So the process of the movements, the pushing movements, becomes an unmindful movement. It's because the mindfulness is not strong, so the mind will wander. So in that way, meditators might not able to realize the process of movements clearly. So meditators have to put forth enough viriya, mental effort, when there's a process of movements, for example the pushing movements occurring at that present moment. For some time, if there's another object, for example an unusual strong itchy sensations, then meditators have to stop walking and be mindful of that sensation. So at the time meditators have to practice patience and be mindful and note that sensation, itching, until that sensation has subsided. And then in this mindfulness meditation, it's always important to mindful and note every mental state which is arising at the present moment. If meditators is not able to mindful and note every mental state, then they will not be able to attain deeper and deeper concentration. So when meditators could slow down the pace of walking gradually, and then they may increase the objects, for example lifting, pushing, dropping, touching, pressing, or lifting, raising, pushing, dropping, touching and pressing. And then when meditators are mindful of their daily routine activities, such as walking from one place to another place, eating, be mindful of eating, drinking, be mindful of paying homage to Buddha and so on. They have to be mindful of many different processes of movements. Besides mindful of the various processes of movements, whenever there's a contact, such as the touching the hand with the cup, meditators also have to mindful of that touching and know it touching. If there's a sharp mindfulness and deep concentration, meditators sometimes can realize the arising of the intention or wanting naturally. If the mindfulness and concentration are not strong enough, then meditators might not be able to realize the arising of the intention or wanting. So meditators are mindful of the wind element frequently during the walking meditation, as well as mindfulness of daily activities. Then when meditators proceed to the sitting meditation, they might have to mindful of the basic object. For example, the movements of the abdomen, which is the manifestation of the wind element. If there's no movements of the abdomen and there's no other distinct object, then meditators have to pay attention to the sitting postures. So that object, sitting posture, is alternate with two touching points. So when there's another stronger body object or sensation arising, then meditators have to mindful of that stronger object and know it as it is. If there's a mental state arising during sitting meditation, such as thinking or planning, then meditators have to mindful of them as they really occur. So meditators are mindful of the material elements, especially wind element, frequently. Sometimes meditators experience heat, which is fire element, the meditators have to mindful and know it as it is. Sometimes meditators experience hardness, the meditators have to know it as it is. If there's a painful feeling arising, and that feeling is the strongest object, for example in the sitting meditation, the meditators have to face with it and note the painful sensation as it really occurs. So the meditators could experience the material elements clearer and clearer, then they may begin to realize mental states clearer and clearer. So the meditators have not yet experienced or realized clearly the characteristics of the material elements, then they might not able to realize the mental states and the consciousness clearly. So meditators have to realize that the consciousness is arising dependent on these four aggregates. But meditators is only be able to be mindful of the most distinct aggregates. In fact, at every moment of mindfulness, there are all these five aggregates are involved. For example, when there's a process of rising movements of the abdomen, that process movements is the rupa khanda. It's because rising movements is wind element, one of the rupa khanda. When there's a rising of the process of the rising movements, meditators recognize it as a rising movement. So this is due to the perception. Sometimes the processes of rising, falling movements are flowing smoothly, and meditators feel that the movements, by being mindful of the movements, meditators experience pleasant feelings. So this flowing of the movements of rising, falling give rise to the pleasant feeling. If the pleasant feeling is being perceived by the meditators, the meditators have to mindful and know it as it is. Mindfulness is one of the factors in the aggregate of formation or Sankhara Khanda. Other factors could arise, for example, attention, manasikara, and so on. So, aggregate of consciousness arising, knowing or cognizing these movements, cognizing this process of movements. But as long as mindfulness is not sharp and concentration is not deep enough, meditators might not able to realize the arising of consciousness, which has the characteristics of knowing or cognizing. So meditators should not purposely focus the attention on the consciousness, which is not yet appear clearly to the mind. So meditators have to put forth more and more virya, so that the true natures of the material elements will be realized or experienced clearly. So if only one of the material elements is realized clearly, is still not yet sufficient to see the process of awareness clearly. the process of consciousness clearly. So meditators should realize the characteristics of the material elements clearly. So if we have understood the teachings of the Buddha, we say that the coming and going consciousness are depending on these four aggregates. In other words, the arising and passing away of the consciousness are conditioned by these aggregates. But the consciousness cannot be clearly perceived unless the true nature or the characteristics of the material elements are clearly perceived or clearly experienced. So, in other words, when the true nature of the material elements can be perceived or experienced clearer and clearer, then the mental state and the consciousness shall be perceived or experienced by the meditators clearer and clearer. So this is explains in the scriptures and with the commentaries. So in other words, when the true nature of materiality, rupa, is realized clearly, then the consciousness which is arising dependent on the materiality will also become evidence. So in those meditators begin to realize what we call conditionality, cause and effect. So the coming and going consciousness are dependent on these four aggregates. The coming and going of consciousness cannot depend on other things. Its passing away and rebirth, its growth, increase and expansion, also dependent on these four aggregates. So, in other words, there's a rebirth because consciousness take delight in the form, or in the feeling, or in the perception, or in the formations. Delight here means nandi, the word nandi is synonymous with raga, lust. So, in other words, all these lobha or greed. Tanha, craving, is also lobha. So, when consciousness takes delight in this form because of the obsessions. So, in other words, consciousness is engaged with these aggregates, with these three kinds of papancha: craving, conceit, and views. So, when there's a delight, then karma will be performed. Then there's this growth of consciousness. In other words, the consciousness will have the support to be reborn again. So when there's this support, then at the moment of passing away of a person, that consciousness in the last moment of life will also pass away. So it is because of passing away of this last consciousness, the death consciousness, then that will give rise to the arising of another consciousness. So this is known as relinking consciousness. So why there's another consciousness arising in the subsequent moment? So it's because of a bhava or craving for becoming. So the craving of becoming arises because of ignorance. What will determine the destiny? For example, in the Kama Bhava or Rupa Bhava or Arupa Bhava. What will determine the destiny? Or the destiny means that, for example, one of the realms in the Kama Bhava, or one of the realms in Rupa Bhava, or one of the realms in Arupa Bhava. So, do you know what's the factor that determines the destiny? So that's why we say karma determines the destiny. That karma, which is associated with other factors such as ignorance, craving, clinging, and so on, will produce the results of rebirth. But the teachings of Buddha, or in those the path of the Dharma, aims at overcoming rebirth in all these three realms. So we have explained how does one overcome rebirth and attain destructions of karma. In the verse, one has to practice the karma that is neither dark nor bright, with neither dark nor bright result, which leads to the destruction of karma. So in the verse, one has to develop fully the Noble Eightfold Path by the practice of Satipatthana meditations. So we shall continue to discuss this discourse, Upaya Sutta, in the next talk. So I wish all meditators, all upasika, all upasakas and upasika, we practice the Dharma correctly, so that you can realize the teachings of the Buddha through your personal experience, direct knowledge, and able to overcome all kinds of mental defilements and shall be free from suffering in samsara eventually.